Thank you. I want to welcome everybody again here to this forum. The title of this panel discussion is called Static, a Hip-Hop Dialogue. And we will be taking, if Snyder didn't say it already, we'll be taking a break at 6 o'clock. So the students who have classes afterwards, you're free to go. We're going to take a short break then, and you're free to go. The topics that we'll be discussing tonight will be changes in the business as far as promotions and marketing in hip-hop, and also changes in content or lack thereof, influence, responsibility versus freedom of speech, misogyny, and artists' rights. So if you have any questions that you want to ask during our question and answer portion for the panelists, then just start thinking of the questions now. First, Mr. Ben Brubaker. And Ben Brubaker is a senior at Tulane University, where he is currently a double major in philosophy and African diaspora studies. As a sophomore in 2006, Brubaker helped establish the annual benefit concert, New Orleans Hip Hop for Hope, which raised over $6,000 in his first year for the MLK Charter School in the 9th Ward, and featured dozens of local hip-hop artists, including Baby Boy the Prince, Soul Rebels, Truth Universal, No One, and more. In September 2007, Ben Brubaker joined Atlantic Records as the New Orleans College representative for Tulane University, and he has continued to work with Atlantic doing urban and lifestyles promotions. Also in 2007, Ben Brubaker established an artist collective called Southpaw Music, which serves as a promotions and booking agency for a group of rising stars in the New Orleans hip-hop scene. Ben Brubaker, ladies and gentlemen. Also with us is Professor Lisa Martin. And Lisa Martin is an instructor in the School of Mass Communications at Loyola University. She's also the interim director of the Center for Intercultural Understanding. Lisa Woman is a woman of many talents and a prime example of where a college education can take someone. And as a college professor and news producer and now businesswoman, Martin takes her experiences and uses them to educate the future professionals of tomorrow. Lisa Martin. We also have Mike Moe, who is the owner of Beltway Records in Houston, Texas. Mike, over the past 7 or 8 years, the Texas-based musical art form known all over the world as screw music has exploded on the hip-hop scene. And screw music and the culture it spawned has given light to an abundance of hip-hop superstars such as Paul Wall, Chamillionaire, Slim Thug, and Mike Jones, and made screw DJs major players in the rap game. One of the genre's biggest and brightest stars are Beltway 8, whose mixtapes have been circulating through the South and the Midwest since 1999. Mike Moe. Well, I want to thank all three of you for coming, and I'd like to introduce our three other panelists. First of all, Ms. Carol Guest, Esquire. Carol Guest is the principal of the Guest Firm, PLLC, based in Houston, Texas. Ms. Guest handles major and independent recording label contract negotiations and drafting for the Guest Firm's clients and advises its clients regarding business and career development and in the areas of copyright, trademark law, and litigation. Notably, she successfully guided popular Houston, Texas music powerhouse Swisher House in securing a major label partnership with the Warner Music Group, through which they released platinum artists such as Mike Jones and Paul Wall, and producers The Gridiron in a lucrative music publishing deal. In years since she started her practice, Ms. Guest started a concert promotions company and featured artists signed to major recording labels such as Interscope and Motown, and served as the weekly legal correspondent for iLife TV's Shine with Michelle Borquez and Friends. Ms. Carol Guest. Also, we have this Mr. Benny Diggs. Benny Diggs is a profit-oriented, enterprising executive with an extraordinary vision and demonstrated success in production, management, sales, and marketing. Benny Diggs is also the owner of, Rev 3 Productions. He's often called upon to provide consulting services to organizations ranging from record labels to advertising agencies. Mr. Diggs is a professional with extensive experience offering enterprise-wide client server and networking strategies to increase penetration of selected markets. His production credits range from Luther Vandross, CNC Music Factory, Aaron Hall, Keith Sweat, Jocelyn Brown, Nancy Wilson, Men of Vision, and Blackstreet. Mr. Benny Diggs. And also we have Mr. Kendall A. Mentor. Kendall Mentor is a native of New York and graduate and senior class president of Flushing High School, beginning his professional career at Cornell University, where he participated in the 6-year combined arts and law program, graduating with a BA, majoring in political science in 1974, and with a JD from Cornell Law School in 1976. During his 6 years in Ithaca, Kendall was Mr. Mentor was a member of the ski team, helped found Black Radio Ithaca, was an announcer for radio stations WVBR-FM and WTKO, and was the principal of Full Circle Enterprises Incorporated, a regional concert promotions firm. Mr. Kendall Mentor. So the topic of this panel discussion is static, a hip-hop dialogue. And so to give a little intro, I'm going to give some definitions of static so we can kind of get an idea of what we're looking at. One is pertaining to or characterized by a fixed or stationary condition, showing little or no change, a static concept, a static relationship, or lacking movement, development, or vitality. So what we want to do tonight is evaluate the ways in which hip-hop has lived up to this definition of being static, or the ways that it has been progressive and has been moving, the changes, whether they be good or bad. So the first question that I want to ask the panel, and I guess we can start off with Ben Brubaker. Now, first of all, would you consider yourself a promotions extraordinaire?
No, I wouldn't consider myself a promotions extraordinaire. I think when you get in that mindset, that's the mindset when you start to get lazy and you become a promotions talker and not a walker.
Heard that. So says a promotions extraordinaire. Spoken like a true one. But really, I really want to give Ben his credit with Atlantic Records and also with Southpaw Music and also with Hip Hop for Hope. The first thing, what would you say are some of the changes that you've seen ever since you've really gotten into the business, the ways that promotions has gone more internet-based, or do you think the future of promotions is going to be less street teams actually handing out flyers and hanging up posters, and there's going to be more technological-based promotions?
I guess to answer the question, you talk about local promotions. I think it's pretty steady here that street teams are effective, especially because the main market here is live music, and so that's what people come out to see. That's what they see in their everyday lives is new posters for concerts, things like that. But in terms of a national marketing scheme, I think that record companies don't really want to spend money where they don't need to. So they've for Atlantic, we've had conference calls talking about the different things that work in the streets and what things we should keep. But for the most part, we're scaling it down right now and really beefing up the online promotions and trying to find new ways that we can intermix multimedia and contests, things to make the listener more interactive and to really drive up record sales, because they're hurting right now and almost all across the board in the industry, but especially hip-hop has seen a recent drop, but I don't think that it's a major thing signifying the end of the popularity of hip-hop at all. So.
And how big of a role would you say that promotions has played in the growth or the decline of record sales?
I think that promotions definitely work with the right marketing scheme and with the right support. Like, if you put up a bunch of posters for an artist that's never getting any radio airplay or playing the clubs, or doesn't even have music for sale in easily accessible places, then it's almost not worth it. Unless you really are trying to get a more grassroots or like underground audience, which works for a lot of bands. So.
The entire music industry has changed dramatically. The whole business model has changed. So if anybody has been in it or familiar with the music industry over the last 5 years, whatever you knew then, forget about it, because it doesn't exist anymore. Because of the explosion of the internet and the explosion of new technology, new media, and the digital evolution, distributors are going out of business, record companies are merging, consolidating, reducing their artist rosters, firing staff, cutting costs. Music now is more accessible to the general public from the creators of music than ever before. And that's because everybody can do basically Pro Tools in your bedroom or bathroom at home, throw it up online, get your MySpace or Facebook pages activated, begin setting up your website for probably very little, if anything at all, in terms of expense out of pocket, begin e-commercing your website, selling music live. And while you may not have the marketing and promotion dollars that the larger record companies have, and you may not sell hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars and units of records, if you're selling music at 99 cents a single for a download through iTunes or directly, or $5 or $10 for an album to be purchased, and you only spent like $5,000 or $10,000 in cash out of pocket, you're in the black and going to the bank and in business literally with just a few thousand hits and a few thousand downloads, eliminating the middleman and making a lot more money ultimately through the sale of your product in the digital form as opposed to the physical CD form than you ever would as a signed artist with a recording contract. So online marketing, online promotion, there are like literally hundreds and hundreds of sites, so you got to get on good booking engines so you can drive traffic to your site. There are companies that do e-blast and do internet marketing and promotion for very low dollars as opposed to the cost of radio promotion, which is the most expensive marketing format for most record companies, which usually runs anywhere from $40,000 to a couple of $100,000 to promote and market the average record on radio. So for those that are in the business right now, from whatever aspect, either from the administrative, the entrepreneurial, or the creative side, it couldn't be a better day if you kind of use your savvy skills and really know how to master the internet.
Also, Mike Moe, one of your the highlights of your career are the mixtapes and that seems to be one of the promotional tools that you've utilized a lot in the last few years. Like, how would you say that mixtapes have helped to promote your artists, and are they a lot less costly than other street promotions as far as like putting up a bunch of posters and trying to get radio play? Like, how would you say they've been useful or not?
Well, my thing that I did was I invested in my company years ago where I didn't actually have to worry about getting product or studio time through other individuals. The mixtape thing, I mean, it helps because it gives the guys that, the guys that I have that no one knows, I can mix those in with the guys that everyone, is familiar with. But at the same token, I also believe that that there is avenues out there, such as in the underground, that you still can actually sell physical music. I tap into markets where the kids are not so savvy as far as have internet ability to get internet or whatnot. I go into those small towns and they don't have record stores in those towns, so we still do real good in those markets. At the same time, we do play the the internet thing. So, but the mixtape is it's a great tool. It's cost effective, and basically, I mean, everything we do is in-house, so it doesn't really cost us anything anymore. So, I mean, we drop mixtapes every week.
Just to interject, one thing that I think about mixtapes is that they get right to the people, and it's from hand to hand. So it actually offers another means of advertising and or promotions on the street. It's not null and void. It's out there, And with the street teams being available, you can actually sell a lot of music. But again, that's in the communities that are looking for those kinds of things. It's kind of underground. They can get new music before it's out to the marketplace, and they look for that. They want to be on the end of what's happening new. You can find a lot of things on mixtapes that you'll never find on a CD. That's one thing that it offers yet. But the world is changing into a digital world. And in those communities, there are a lot of young people that are not savvy with computers. And I know that sounds strange in this day and time, but that's still a marketplace that's growing. It is growing. I think it's gonna take over in no time at all. Everyone's gonna have a computer in their home soon. That's not the case at this point, especially with hip hop.
Yeah, I agree. And the funny thing is, we had Universal call about 2 months ago, and they was asking, "Hey, can we follow you guys around to where you guys are selling music at?" Mm-hmm. Of course, we told them no.
Of course.
But you know, like I said, the internet. I mean, I believe that eventually one day it will take its course. But at the same token, I'm not afraid of that at all.
Ms. Guest, I see that you also have advised clients in the areas of copyright. Now, while we're on this topic of mixtapes, how does that come into play? Because most mixtapes involve using beats and music from songs that have already been released by other artists. So why is that not a copyright issue? Can you explain to the audience why?
Did you say why is it not a copyright issue?
Or why it is?
Okay, it is a copyright issue. I'll start by saying that once a person fixes lyrics or music on a medium, there's a copyright. It's not registered with the Copyright Office until forms are filled out and submitted to the Copyright Office, and that gives a person the opportunity to file a lawsuit in federal court if their copyright is infringed. But as far as mixtapes are concerned, I gave that background to say that it's anybody who raps over a song that has been released, registered with the Copyright Office, that is copyright infringement. So, but the issue with mixtapes is that it helps to promote the artist. Like if someone is rapping over a 50 Cent track, there's usually not a lot of beef between the person who's putting out the mixtape and the label, because it's another form of promotion. And that's why it's gone on so long. However, because of the real lawsuits and et cetera, you've had people come in, want to sue and et cetera, but it hasn't stopped the underground. Nothing can stop the underground. That's never going away. So I guess a short answer would be is that yes, it is copyright infringement, but it's kind of, people turn their heads. They look the other way.
And we don't know of that case in terms of Soulja Boy. Mm-hmm. It's a real clear issue, but nobody sued him, you see? And because again, it's a form of promotions and it's underground. And that's the reason why the song jumped off so well, because it was a familiar track.
And the industry seems to try to find a balance too, because some of you may remember the prosecutions and the arrests last year in Atlanta with the sting with the FBI and the RIAA. And what happens is, I call mixtapes like a necessary evil because it does a positive thing, as Carol and Mike says. It promotes existing music as well as promotes new music. And that's why most record companies kind of look the other way, because for no money at all, they're getting additional promotion. But every once in a while, when the political squeeze happens, that's when the prosecutions and the arrests happen, and all they're doing is they're using the Copyright Act of '76 to enforce their prosecutions for copyright infringement. But they happen in rare instances, and when they do, it's big news nationwide.
Yeah, I was actually investigated by the RIAA some 6 years ago, and after we had talks, they kind of just told me what to do in order to avoid, certain situations. I won't tell you what they are, but it was turn a blind eye.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you. I want to keep moving. The next question is actually to Professor Lisa Martin. So, if hip hop as a culture can be described as a child with three parents, and those three parents are the audience, the artists, and the record labels, When this child misbehaves, who holds the most responsibility?
Who is the first parent?
The audience,
The audience?
the
artist
artists,
and the
and the
record
record
label.
labels.
Who's responsible when the child misbehaves? Wow. I'm glad he saved the easy question for me. Well, I certainly wouldn't blame
Who
the
holds the
audience.
most responsibility?
I certainly wouldn't blame the audience, because if the product is out there, it's available to the audience, and the audience has a right to choose or not to choose, and there's a lot of variety in hip hop. So if there's something that you appreciate, then go for it as a member of the audience. If there's something that offends you, then leave it alone. I talked to some students in my office today who said, I was asking them about some videos that I wanted them to show me, and they said, oh, I don't even watch videos anymore. And I thought that was interesting, because as an audience member, they have made the adult decision to choose not to expose themselves to this. The artist, wow. I guess I guess I would have to say the artist and the record company, because the artist is the one who gave birth to this baby, and the record company is financing the child's existence. And if anybody's going to be responsible for what goes out to the public, the audience, then it would have to be those two. And if there's going to be a sense of responsibility, I would say it was those two.
Someone want to comment?
Yeah, I wanted to comment on that. I think that it's hard to pin down out of the three who would be held responsible, because in a case-by-case basis, I mean, there's a lot of different ways that it could play out. But I think that one thing that question misses, it's kind of like a loaded question, it misses who's outside of just the listeners or the audience. Because I think those structural forces also, just like capitalism, we live in a market-driven society, so whatever the market demands, they're gonna get met with the record companies, because that's how you make money. And if the record companies see a steady trend in, a certain type of music that's popular that may have a negative, aspect about it, it doesn't matter. I mean, oil companies don't stop drilling when there's environmental, disasters or things like that. It's a really shady kind of fine line. But I think that ultimately, if we want to talk about music being responsible for negative after effects, then I think you have to hold the entire, global or national industries also at fault when they've crossed the line. So
I actually blame the label for, and reason being, I mean, I understand the need to make money. I surely understand that, but at the same token, I chose not to follow the trend. I wouldn't dare produce a Soulja Boy or other those little guys that's kick dancing and whatever they call it. I mean, it just doesn't. It doesn't represent me, and it's not real music to me. I mean, that's cool what they're doing, but that's not what hip hop is to me. If I have to follow a trend just for the money, I'd rather not follow that trend. So I blame the label.
See, I look at it a little bit differently. I don't actually blame the labels, because you just got to understand that most labels are just commercial pimps, just like the oil companies. But I'll tell you, I mean, well, in answer to the question, when you talk about misbehaving, the only misbehaving I really see is some ignorance in the streets where folks are getting arrested for the stuff that they're doing, because it's just stupid. That for me is a misbehaving, because it casts a pall on the entire industry. But when it comes to lyrics, then you got the issue of censorship. Then you got the issue of commerciality versus artistic integrity, and those are fine lines to draw. They showed up a little bit in rock and roll. They obviously showed up back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s with reggae. Then we had the gangster rush with gangster rap, and hip-hop has gone from gangster to ignorant club smacking. So for me, I don't blame the integrity of the music, because it's artistic freedom, and people buy what they want. They say you should be responsible, but I think parents of kids should be more responsible for what their kids buy if they're under 18. If they're over 18, you can go get drunk, go to war, and buy whatever the hell you want to listen to. Under 18, there should be some kind of parental intervention to make sure they're not listening to just stupid stuff that takes them in the opposite direction. But beyond artists just acting ignorant and getting arrested for some of the stuff that they're doing, I don't see anybody that's misbehaving.
That's why I'm really glad that we asked this question, because there were 3, 4, or 5 completely different answers to it, and that's the truth. And it should be open for debate, because it depends on where your stance is in the industry. If you're an artist, then you can relate to situations where you'll do a song or be producing a certain type of music, and your label will say, no, like, how are we going to market that? That's not what people are listening to right now. We can't market that. Go back and do, you know, a pop song. Go back and make up a dance to your song. Something that, you know, people in the South are going to like. But then also you have record labels who have to make money. They're putting all their money at risk every day that they sign an artist, because they're not guaranteed to get a return on that money that they use to promote and to market an artist. So in some way, they have to figure out, how am I going to make a return on my investment? Now, when you have record labels that are releasing artists such as Talib Kweli or Common or Mos Def, who are putting out music that many would label as positive, but these artists never go gold and far from platinum. And so the label is putting out the music, but they're not exactly getting the greatest return on their investment. Whereas you have a label such as Interscope, therefore Aftermath, Shady Records, and then G Unit, where you're putting out 50 Cent's music, who some may label as negative, but 50 Cent is selling millions of copies every year. So should the label sacrifice their integrity to make a return on their investment and serve the purpose and actually make a profit? Or should they just, you know, say, forget the money and we're going to try to promote music that we think is good?
I'm sorry, I won't say the name, but I was a contract worker at a major independent distributing company. And I actually sat in meetings and watched the people say, hey, just put it out. It's like, well, it's not any good. They're like, just put it out anyway. And so what happens is you put out all the music in the market, consumers buy it, and then it's, you know, not worth it. And then after a while, it's like, I'm not picking up any more music because I've been burnt these 2-3 times. So the major labels, in my thing, is they hijack the music, and now, you know, everybody's feeling the effect of it. So there's a chunk of music out there.
You have to consider why they actually chose that music, because it sells and it makes dollars, and that's what they're interested in. And those are the reasons why 50 Cent can keep putting out an album, because he'll keep getting funded because he sells. They provide a menu and we buy it.
And that's why there's also so little innovation and new sounds that you hear on the radio. Because, I mean, you know, if you listen to most radio stations, they have a limited playlist. They usually have anywhere from 20 to 40 slots that they just rotate. So after a while, if you listen to the same station for 2 or 3 hours, you have heard the same song 2 or 3 times in a row, and that's because the labels are playing it safe. All they're doing is signing up the same thing that sounds like the last thing, that sounds like the thing before that, because nobody wants to venture outside the box. Then every once in a while, you'll get a Common, you'll get a Mos Def, you'll get an NWA, you'll get a Public Enemy, you'll get Music Soul Child, and you make it some alternative music. But by and large, you're correct. I mean, the labels are only pandering to the common public interest. I mean, if you listen to Soulja Boy and Laffy Taffy on D. Pharrell, the lyrics make no sense at all. But if you go into the junior high schools and the high schools where this music is breaking out, the kids are wild. They're coming up with new dances. They're coming up with everything that goes along with the song. So it's a new culture that's evolving out of, I say, probably like the 12-year-old to the 25-year-old demographic, that now all the record companies are just saying, give me one more like that. Why should we step outside the box, since 95% of the music that we put out and the artists that we sign, we lose money on? So the 5% that they're pandering to, or the 5% that's putting out crazy, dope, insane, nonsensical lyrics.
Well, and I would like to add that if you are sick of the kind of music that you hear, you have to not purchase it, or encourage people not to purchase it, because the bottom line is that they're corporate entities. They were formed to make money, not to make political statements or to improve somebody's life with moral values. They have been created to make money. The second thing I would like to add to that is that if there are lots of people buying a 50 Cent album or a D4L album or making up dances and etc., then you have to look at what kind of person is purchasing that record. Now, if you think that it's that the lyrics are empty, the music is not full, it's not making a statement, etc., then more than likely the person who's purchasing that is not full and doesn't have a certain moral character about them, et cetera, et cetera. I would say if it's a big concern of yours, what the buying patterns are for people, and you want those to change, then it might be up to you to get into the communities where these children are and try to show them some other alternative to whatever lifestyle they're living is that even drives them to make those kinds of choices. For me, when I look at the situation, it's all psychological, because whatever a person likes, that's what they're going to go after. When I was in high school, NWA, the gangster movement was starting to jump off. I was listening to Kid and Play, Big Daddy Kane, and we were having fun at the parties. Nobody was talking about shooting or getting shot or anything along those lines. And I think that a profit motive was behind their telling those types of stories. So I didn't live that type of culture. I wasn't raised that way. But the bottom line is that if there's going to be some type of difference in music, then the people have to change. Because as long as there is an audience that likes that, somebody's going to make a product for it.
And see, I think a question too that I would have will be, for example, everybody here in the audience, how much impact each of you all either have or don't have in the music industry today in terms of what's being consumed and what's being recorded. Like, in the last 30 days, how many folks here bought a CD in a record store? Less than a dozen. Like, in the last 30 days, how many folks here downloaded some music?
Yeah.
Now, in the last 30 days, the folks that downloaded that music, how many folks, without any problems, paid for the music that you downloaded as opposed to shared it? See, the majority, by just a little bit, are downloading music, but you're doing file swapping and sharing or burning CDs from other folks and not necessarily paying for it. And that also impacts the quality of what gets recorded by the record companies, what gets funded, what acts get sold. So if we're not making an impact on the financial bottom line of the labels, we have less of an influence over ultimately what they sign and put out.
And we're all here in the music industry, everybody here, I think.
No.
Just about most of us are in the industry itself.
The media.
And so what you find is that all of us become affected with it. All of our artists, the touring, everything is affected by the fact that everyone's now downloading music rather than going to the record stores and purchasing a CD.
It affects the car note, the rent, the mortgage.
And it's not as expensive to have to do a track that doesn't take an actual musician, you know, somebody who knows how to run a session, and you know, the money that's being missed from the file sharing and file swapping, that would go toward paying a real musician or someone who knows how to produce a session.
Well, I've had a young lady that worked at my record store, and she would go home on the weekends after she left school, and she would come back with burnt CDs.
Yeah.
So I asked her, I said, where'd you get the CDs from? She said, I got them from the flea market. They burnt them for me. So when the music sales went down, the first person I laid off was her, because she was thinking that.
That's reality.
But it is, it is. And another thing too now, I don't know what influence do the artists have on the consumer. I don't watch BET, I don't watch MTV because it's all smoke and mirrors. But if I wasn't in the music industry and I was a consumer of music, I wouldn't buy the music, because the first thing I would think about, look at all that gold and platinum and diamonds and cars he got. He don't need my money. You know, so hell, I download it too, you know, so.
I like to say one thing, actually in defense of the audience, because, well, personally my stance is I can't point out any one of the three that has, you know, the majority of the blame. And my reason is this: there are many millions more McDonald's in the world than there are Quiznos. Quiznos is very healthy, or somewhat, you know, you can consider it healthy. There's plenty more McDonald's. I'm all about analogies. I'm all about yeah, but McDonald's are much more prevalent in the country. So, therefore, many more people eat McDonald's than they do Quiznos. That's not simply because they just don't like Quiznos, but it also has a lot to do with availability. And when you have a repeated message that, you know, when that repetition does affect a buyer's opinions and the consumer's opinions. The first time that you hear a song like Laffy Taffy, you're like, Laffy Taffy? A candy? That's the dumbest thing I ever heard. After your 50th time hearing it, you know, you start, I don't know, it just starts affecting you. And you start getting used to it because of the repetition. So that's my one stance in defense of the audience. And actually, Professor Martin and Dan, you all been kind of quiet. If you have anything to say about that.
Well, I wanted to say I definitely think that repetition, like the mainstream music marketing that they do, that's what sells CDs. It's not really the talent that they get, because I don't think for the most part even the upper industry people necessarily believe in the value of the music that they're selling. But I think really what it comes down to is that, like, music, if we're talking about like health foods, like, okay, Quiznos, came out and they're healthy, but no one necessarily wants to get it. But if you look at the competition that it produced, though, that the people who started to go get Quiznos or Subway, they had a really great marketing campaign. So people started to get Subway. Then the McDonald's and all the really, other high-selling places started to make, fat food, like fat-free, like food or salads, things like that, and start marketing that towards that audience. And so I think that you look at like Kanye and 50. Kanye sold more albums the first 2 weeks than 50, and he's, I guess you could say a borderline socially conscious rapper. He's had Mos Def and different people like comment on his tracks. So I think it needs to be hot, like real good, true art. If we want it to infiltrate the mainstream market, we have to make it hot, and we have to make it appeal to the audience. But we have to convince record companies that if you just plug it enough times, and if you put the same money you did into all this club music into the right music, that whatever negative impacts that create all the controversy now would pretty much fade away, and people would start to actually appreciate the value of hip hop the same way that jazz, and the same way that other musics like that evolve. So.
Luckily, we can't download hamburgers. That'd be a good thing.
And I guess following up on what Carol said about people being empty, if you're made of nothing in the first place, it's okay. And to go on with these food analogies, if you're getting dessert every day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you eat sweets all the time, cake, ice cream, after a while you get sick of it, and you need something with substance. Even if you just, you need it to live, you need it to survive, you need it to grow as you get older. You look at Jennifer Lopez, who is it, Sean Combs and Sean Carter. They've all changed their names back to their original names, because after a while, J-Lo, Jay-Z, and P. Diddy, just, it's not sophisticated enough. It's too much candy. It's too fluffy. It's just no substance. And in order to have substance, you have to have a message, and you have to have something that goes beyond, what you've been getting, what you've been served your whole life. If you want to grow, if you want to develop, you're going to have more than you're being offered by, who was talking about Soulja Boy and, some of the other guys. It's just not going to work. You can't live off that.
Well, part of the problem that I see is that, again, I think it's a demographic thing, because the labels, for everybody here, in about 5 or 10 years, you're going to be outside the zone of influence as it comes to selection of music by record companies, because y'all going to be over 30. And if you're over 30, the record companies are not significantly spending any time, any money, any energy or resources catering to your musical tastes. Small niche labels will, independent labels will, the major labels will maybe have a small half a dozen artists that fit that genre of music and that age demographic out of hundreds on their roster. But the Chrisette Michelles and the Jill Scotts and folks like that who have tremendous talents that are singing to folks that are 30 and over, sophisticated and mature, they're not being promoted, they're not being marketed, they're not selling the same number of units as Soulja Boy and even Kanye and Jay-Z and a whole bunch of more younger audience, contemporary artists, because in the record industry now, the primary record-selling marketing demographic is basically 12 to 25. And once you're outside that zone, you're marginal. So that's obviously a major influence and factor on what gets signed, what gets funded, how much they spend on marketing and promotion, and then ultimately what sells, so it becomes really like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
I say hip hop has been hijacked by the corporate, entities that is will. One thing I've seen is that, and I'll say this probably what happened about 5 years. I forgot the name of the group, but there was a group that Walmart had sunk about $16-20 million into to do an exclusive deal through their distribution channels. They gave the guys, I think, about $6 million up front, $15 million into marketing promotions. And I think, this is just my theory, I think that the major labels on their last leg, and those distribution outlets such as your Best Buys, your Walmarts, those are going to be our new retail distributors for the simple fact that they have all the,
They are now.
all the so,
Yeah.
But like I said, basically just hip hop has been hijacked, and they don't know what to do with it anymore, pretty much. So whatever trend is available, like you said, hey, they just got to follow up with it because they got to make their money.
And speaking on that, I would like to know, a second ago, we spoke about how music is getting out there, and people are finding new channels to promote their music. And like when we asked how many people in here bought an album or downloaded the song, when we said who downloaded the song, the majority of the room raised their hands. Now, as the industry is changing, it's almost like the record labels have to catch up with the technology as far as the business aspect of it and monetizing it and changing those downloads into profits. So how do you think that we're going to be able to do that? Like, I know there's services such as iTunes where you pay 99 cents per song, or other websites that may use a subscription to allow people to download songs. But what's the best way, or how do you think that's going to happen?
Well, I got nieces and nephews that are in middle school, so I'm gonna let them deal with that, as far as technology goes, because I can't follow it. It moves too fast, so that's just one of the things, hey, what do you do?
My thought right now is that all you guys that are sitting here can affect the change. I think you can diligently, because music is going to be around. I don't care what they do, music is going to be around. I think that if we can now get the word out there, you can make the music, you can sell the music, and you can do all the things that record companies are trying to do. You can market it. All that's available. We see that from the internet. We see that from the sites, from MySpace to Facebook to there's just so much stuff online that now has become, the industry is becoming more personal, more personalized. And I think that you guys can affect that. If you're going to enter into the business, I think you can make the change.
And part of what's happening now is, as you see, when we talked earlier about the record companies losing revenue because everybody's on the internet and downloading, the record companies basically have to blame and fault themselves, even though they don't like to, because as the internet was developing and as downloads and digital millennium was like in our face about 10 years ago, they didn't believe it, they didn't understand it, they didn't know how to deal with it, they didn't know how to capture the rights or monetize it, and as a result, the train left the station. So now you got the train moving literally at a fast break pace, and you got all these idiots at the record company running behind it with bare feet trying to catch up with it. It's just not going to happen. So what's going to happen is, over the years that are coming, for you all, if you really want to be involved as entrepreneurs or creators in the music industry, you really have to be able to capture, understand the internet, the technology,
yes,
and where it's going, not where it is today. Where is it going? Where is it going to be 2, 3, and 4 years from now? Because it's literally changing every single month. I mean, YouTube didn't exist a few years ago, and look at where it is right now. Everybody's watching YouTube. MySpace, Facebook, next year there'll be another one. There'll be another one that follows after that, but the technology is continuing to evolve. So the challenge for you all is to try to get ahead of the train, try to figure out where it's going, use today's technology as a platform from which to build as a foundation, but where is it going to be that you can kind of control what you create, you can market it, you can promote it, you can do it for as little as possible, you can make a profit, have some fun, and retire.
I just wanted to, I guess, comment on just this in general to make it more applicable to all of your lives. If you have artists that you represent, or you're an artist, and that includes visual artists or music artists, go to spuntv.com and get in touch. Just send an email about your artist. I just started working for them. It's a New Orleans-based company based out of WNOA TV, and they have a new lifestyles and entertainment website that they're launching at the end of the month. And basically, like, they're increasing it in a couple different phases, but it's going to have like networking capabilities, just like Facebook. It's going to have updated videos weekly and daily with artist pages selling artist music, both for visual and music artists. And so the amazing thing about this is that if you sign up to sell your music on Spun TV, the artist gets a 70-30 split. So you're going to get 70% of all the profits sold. That's like one of the most competitive price splits in the industry right now. So y'all, stand to make a reasonable amount of money with a little bit of promotion. All you have to do is promote yourself on the website. And then we have artists from Atlanta, from LA, from New York, but it's based out of New Orleans. So it shows you what the internet can do to bring industry outside of just the major cities where the market is almost so competitive and so densely packed that it's almost like overkill, and you don't even reach people. So basically, if you have artists or you're interested in getting involved with this is like an example of different things that are coming up in the future where it can completely revolutionize the industry, over the course of a few months, so check it out.
Right now we're going to take a short break. I want everybody to give a hand for our panelists. I want to thank everyone again who was able to stay for the remainder of our discussion. And we're going to open it up to the questions for the audience in just a second. Not just yet, because there's a few more points that I wanted to cover first. And starting with Professor Martin, once again. So Russell Simmons believes that hip-hop artists' expressions are mirrors and sometimes of what we do but then overlook, and they just bring it out. Do you agree or disagree with this statement?
I get all these questions. Absolutely. It mirrors society, but in some ways it's exaggerated. Today I saw a video. What was the name of it?
Tip drill.
Okay. All right. I don't know how many artists have experienced that. I don't know how many regular people in the hood have experienced that. I don't know who, has experienced that. So as a reflection of mirroring society, I think they might mirror society with a great exaggeration. And, in my background is television, okay? So I'm talking about this from a communications perspective, from a theoretical perspective. I worked in news my whole life. When you work in news, you can't show what's in the middle, because most of us are in the middle. There are a handful of us on the outside on one side and another handful of us on the outside on another side. Those are the people who make the news. Those are the people who are exciting to us. So if you have a guy going out on a date and he buys pizza and they go to a movie and they hold hands and kiss on the cheek, nobody cares. But, if you can swipe a credit card, and you know what I'm talking about, then that's going to sell, that's going to get the attention, and that's not a reflection of reality. Sorry, Russell Simmons.
Very cool, very cool. That's a great answer, that's all I can say. It's the reality, though. It's the reality. It does not mirror society. It mirrors what they want you to see and what sells. And the marketing department has decided that that's what they're going to focus on. So they show that because it sells. Again, the record industry is absolutely about making money. These companies did not start because they want to change the world. Nobody ever heard that word. They don't want to change the world. They want to make money. So they're going to go after what sells. For them, that's sex and drugs.
And violence.
Exactly.
Violence certainly sells.
And violence, exactly correct. That's what sells for them. And why? Because it shows up in the numbers. And they fight to keep that happening.
I think what they're doing is selling a fantasy.
Yeah, it doesn't mirror.
And people are buying a fantasy. That's the bottom line, because I know that most people I know, regardless of class level, do not on a routine basis allow a credit card to be swiped between their butt cheeks. So that's a fantasy. You know, that's looking inside of a world that somebody else has created and that we don't live every day. But I think it's an interesting, it's an interesting contrast to note that people continuously say that they're sick of seeing something like that, but the voyeur in every person, in most people, is not controlled, and so they can't stop looking at it or wanting to participate. They kind of want to participate, but they don't want other people to know they're participating.
Well, you
But
know,
I'm sorry.
I was just going to say is, as long as that type of person exists, like I mentioned before about the psychology of the situation, that they're willing to put their money behind it, that type of thing is going to continue to happen.
I think most of that type of music, like for example, if you watch any of the video cable channels these days, I don't care whether it's BET, MTV, whatever it might be, and you look at your typical hip hop video, how many videos do you remember watching in the last week or last month that didn't have some hoochie mamas dancing around the screen, just wearing as little as possible, but it fits in with where the mindset is these days? What's the biggest type of internet traffic in the world today?